That's what they say. The Bears fans don't know how to treat their players, that we're rude, we're uncouth, we're upsetting to some. But listen, I'll tell you what happened. We had a Northwestern grad recently join our team, Trevor Siemian, and we welcomed him back to Chicago in the most second city way imaginable. We stole his car. That's right. Trevor Siemian had his Dodge SRT Hellcat, amazing car, stolen from the Beverly Country Club on the south side. This coming from a report by Amy Jacobson of the Chicago City Wire. Apparently he went out playing golf, comes back, car's gone. That is Chicago. The only way that could have been more Chicago would have been had the thieves left an Old Style and a Portillo's Italian beef there waiting for him, ready to go. Maybe a Giordano's or Lou Malnati's, whatever side of the fence you're on. That's it. The only possible way to welcome him to Chicago. And let's welcome you to the show by Sammy. Roll our animation.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
Trying to cut it back. Justin Fields making magic happen. There goes Fields. Touchdown.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Tuesday night, and you know what that means. It is time for Take It to the Rank. We're going to have a great show tonight. One of our favorite guests is going to be returning tonight. But before we bring him on, it's obviously very important to go ahead and address not the elephant, but let's say the grizzly bear in the room. And of course, on Monday, an issue came to our attention. Listen, we'd been tweeting out quotes from Bears management, coaches, sometimes players, just tweeting them out, trying to spread the love of Chicago. And in a complete oversight on our part, we didn't properly attribute it to the reporters who are on the ground gathering this information. And honestly, and that's the etiquette. And we made a mistake. And I would like to take this opportunity right now to apologize. We should have been doing a better job of this. So to the men and the women who this affects, who do a great job of covering this team day in and day out, we sincerely apologize. It was a mistake. Listen, ever since we've started this podcast, we've tried to be gracious members of this Bears community. And as the new kids, we made a dumb mistake. So apologies to anybody who was affected, and of course, including Kevin Fishbane, who brought this to our attention. I thank him for doing it too, as well. I would rather go out there and address it right now. I don't want it festering. I don't want people hating us. So listen, we made a mistake. We'll take the L on that one. And I hope that you will accept our sincerest apologies. We won't do that again. And if we do, call us out. But listen, we're going to do a better job. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Because right now it's time to welcome in our guest, a repeat, as I mentioned here a moment ago, one of our favorites. He's a co-host of a brand new Chicago Bears podcast called the Bear Down Chai Pod. He's also a contributor to the Windy City fan side, the Windy City FS. He does a great job for them. Please welcome our buddy, Patrick Sheldon. Patrick.
Adam, thanks so much for having me back, man. I've missed your musk. It's nice to be back.
Oh, it's great to have you. We were talking about this before the show. We're bald. We're a couple of bald guys just sitting here, reveling in our glory. We're both wearing hats that shows our insecurity. And but I think it's good. How have you been? Everything good?
Yeah, I'm doing great. The hat is more self-preservation for me. As we were talking before the show, I live in South Carolina, and the sun is not, as you know, too kind to us bald domers. So the hats have become a staple in my repertoire these days to keep the sun off.
I had a weird issue at Frozen Yogurt the other day. I had my two kids there. There was another bald gentleman at a table next to us, and he had the obvious hat head with the tan line of a snapback. Like I'm wearing a snapback right now, but I don't wear a snapback in the sun because I want to avoid this thing about I don't want to get that tan. You know what I'm saying? So he had it. I didn't know if I should tell him. I felt like as a fellow bald, I could go up there and say this to him, but he didn't seem very approachable. And so I let it go. I don't know. I don't know what the etiquette is there.
It's like a Seinfeld episode.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it does seem like something like this is a modern day Seinfeld. Do you tell the guy with the bald guy with the weird? Because I get the Kuchar tan sometimes too. I got to be very mindful of that as well. So you don't want to get the Kuchar tan or anything like that. But it is good to see you. I want to talk a little bit. You started a brand new podcast. How is that going? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
We did. So first of all, thank you for the support, tweeting out our inaugural tweet. We did start a new podcast. So formerly Bear Down Report, the guys of the Bear Down Report, Brendan Shagru, Ryan Dingle, Jack Wright, Logan Bradley, and myself, we started a new venture called the Bear Down Chicago Podcast. You can find us at Bear Down Shy on Twitter. And we're going to be coming out with our first episode here very, very soon. So thank you again to all the fans on Twitter. The support's been overwhelming. We love our fans and they're very loyal and supportive. So thank you, everyone. And we look forward to kicking things off here real soon.
Yeah, I want to get Shagru on the show here at some point, but I'm afraid I'm going to mess up his name. Like poor Nicholas. Dude, Nicholas was on the other day, and like I swear to God, I was calling him Nick Moreno. And I think I did not call him Nick Moreno. It was Moreno, like Moses Moreno. Listen, I live in Southern California. When I see a name, it looks like I don't know why my mind's eye just goes to Moreno. And I noticed Shagru finally put in his Twitter bio how to say his names. I'm like, well, now I can have him on. So I can avoid it because I'm terrible.
His name's in my head at this point. Like I can't, initially I couldn't remember if it was SU or SE, and now I'm just all messed up on it. So he's in my head. I can't,
It happens. Yeah, no. Like when I first started working with Akbar Bajibiamila, did not want to say that name at all. Aditi Kinkabwala, like those names are intimidating at first, and now you just kind of get used to it and you move on. I do want to say though, we did on the pod on Thursday, because Lori Lightfoot came out and she was talking about the stadium situation, and we talked about this. What should the Bears do? I'm curious to find out, what do you think we should do? Not what is going to happen, but what is your preference? Do you like the stadium? I know you're in South Carolina, so this doesn't matter to us as much, but I'm curious of your thoughts. Do you like having the stadium on the lake, or do you think it's, move to Arlington Heights, get the complex around it, make a little Bear city out there, and go about it that way?
Yeah. Well, so I'll say I've only been to Soldier Field a couple of times, and it's amazing. And if you're a Bears fan, it's a must see. You have to get out there. What an experience. And I loved it. I love Soldier Field, the history, the columns. It was wonderful. With that said, I'm a bit of a pragmatist, right? And they got to move. Some of these modern stadiums are absolutely amazing. The amenities are incredible. I think Bears fans deserve that kind of experience. And not to mention, you can, do so many other things here. I mean, you can have a casino, you can have, a whole variety of restaurants and bars and shops. It can be a whole experience for you. So you do give up a lot by leaving the city, but boy, I think the folks will come around pretty quickly once they get out there and start living that, modern day stadium experience.
Yeah, you get the Final Fours, you get WrestleMania, maybe AEW eventually has a big stadium. AEW's first big stadium show would probably be in Chicago. So you think about it that way, like there's so many opportunities for this team to improve and kind of hopefully improve the overall organization and bring some income in. I think it's something that needs to be done. It just has to happen. I think that, and I still say this, and we said that we talked about this on Thursday, and apologies to everybody who watches and listens to every show. But, I always thought it was a misstep that they tore down the old Comiskey Park, although the new one's starting to look better and better. Like even the outside facade looks good. The food's amazing. It always seemed like a mistake to tear down the old Comiskey. Wrigley Field's the same way. Things that are ingrained, indelible into the neighborhood. Soldier Field is just kind of out there. It's on the other side of a highway. You got to kind of, it's not necessarily attached to downtown, even though it sort of is. I don't know. It's fun. I understand. I don't blame anybody who wants to stay there, but at the same time, I think it's time to move.
Here's the other thing. Look, I'm not is it a horticulturist? I don't know who knows a lot about grass, right? But like, why is it that week 2, that field looks like, a fairway after I get done carving it up? I mean, it looks terrible. Yeah. Like go to Arlington Heights, get a real field, get a track that those guys can play on and play fast on. But this idea of like the bear weather being a thing, it hasn't helped us in decades. So what are we sticking around for?
Yeah, my dad always looks at that playoff game where they lost to the 49ers, the soft-ass 49ers, as he liked to refer to them as. And he's like, bear weather died that day.
Yeah.
So it is one of those things that, you know what, it's over. Time to move on. And it is what it is. What about the current construction of the team? Again, we keep doing this. I know we're kind of waiting for some of the – I don't think there's going to be any big moves that are going to be happening up until the time of the draft. But what do you think? I mean, the Bears are just quietly adding pieces to this puzzle. What do you think about some of the recent moves the team has made?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. Look, it's no secret. I haven't been a fan of Ryan Pace. I think he kind of left them a little bit of a mess. And Ryan Poles is doing exactly what he told you he was going to do heading into this offseason. He was going to be patient. He was going to look for guys that I think fit his type, his personality, the scheme that he wants to play, but also the timeline, right? So I know a lot of folks were like, hey, the first signing was a defensive player, a 3-tech that they overpaid for. That doesn't fit their scheme or their plan of patience. But I think it did, right? I think he's looking for players that he can see sticking around for a while and fit in that timeline. And so if he's got a guy that plays a position that critical to the defense and he's young enough and he thinks, hey, I can get this guy for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, then that's great. But I just don't think he sees the value in the offensive line free agents that were out there and were available, to go ahead and overspend and pay some of those guys a lot of money. I think there are a lot of moves still to be made. I think folks get a little bit nervous now that free agency is winding down, but you got the draft, you got the post June 1 cuts. You always have a few surprise cuts around, cut down day when they get down to the roster, the 53-man roster. So I think there are more moves to be made, but he's the antithesis of Pace, right? We complained for years about everything that Pace did, how he overpaid, how he was too aggressive, how he didn't let the market come to him. He overspent for Foles, overspent for Dalton. And then Poles comes in and he's like, all right, I'm going to do things differently. And now we're like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's an idiot. Like, go overspend, go be Pace. We just got to be patient. This year's going to be a reset. And then he's been a part of organizations that know how to build a winner. He's been a part of 3 different administrations in Kansas City. I think they've done pretty darn good over the years. So let's give him a chance and let's see him execute on a plan, which honestly, we haven't seen in years. We haven't seen the Bears front office have a cogent plan and execute on that in years. It's just been kind of year to year that they've lived and tried to cobble together a roster and hopefully squeak in the playoffs with, 9 or 10 wins.
Yeah, doesn't that always seem what it was like with Ryan Pace in that there really wasn't some sort of identity? There wasn't like a player that you would see and be like, well, that's a Bears player. Or that's somebody, when you're scouting for the draft or anything like that. Like I was sitting there looking at some of these players in the draft, and I don't know what it was about Chris Olave where I was thinking about the Saints. I'm like, God, that seems like a Saints receiver. For whatever reason, maybe he played too many games in the Sugar Bowl or whatever it is. I never got that sense with the Bears. Like they acquired it's somebody who like decorates. It's sort of like the way this room back here is just put together. Well, I just threw all my Bears knickknacks up there. Like, Dad, we'll see how this works. And this is kind of thrown together. There's a Rock bobblehead with all these. That doesn't make sense. Like, well, how does the Rock fit in with the rest of the Bears here? He doesn't. I just put him up there. And it always feels like that's the way that Ryan Pace kind of constructed the team. Like, you want to give me Khalil Mack? Okay, fine. I'll take him. Bobby Quinn? Fine. It didn't feel like there was an identity to anything that the Bears had been doing over the last number of years.
No, not at all. I mean, if he's got a type, right, it's like what, a 6'5" Division II tight end. I mean, that's what we joke around about with Ryan Pace. His types always seem to be either aging players at the end of their prime or overpaying for an unproductive tight end like Adam Shaheen. So no, it's refreshing to see a GM have a plan, be disciplined, actually stick to that plan. Like, look, I get Ryan Pace came in and said, hey, we're going to focus on the draft. We're going to build through the draft. We're going to draft a quarterback every year. He did none of those things. He drained away all his draft capital and drafted one QB in his entire tenure. So it's good to see a GM actually do what he says he's going to do.
Yeah, I forgot about that. We're going to draft a quarterback every year and kind of approach it that way. You know what? I know that I'm a little bit biased because I'm close, close to Anaheim. So I follow the Los Angeles Angels, who I think in the grand scheme of things really mirror the Bears in a lot of ways, and not in a lot of good ways. And for the Angels, it's always been about like, well, what about pitching? What are you guys doing about pitching? Can he pitch? Can this, whatever? And they got a new general manager 18 months ago. Perry came in and started to address it. And when you look at the way the Angels have played for the first 6 games of the season, their pitching has actually been the strong part of that team. They've lost to the Astros because they couldn't hit enough and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's a definite shift to where now the pitching, it feels like they have enough pitching. The hitters need to start coming through. And I think that if we give Ryan Poles enough credit and enough time, that's exactly what's going to happen, where the lines are going to be the strength of this team, great offensive lines, great defensive lines, and then we'll start to see the fruits of the labor. But I think that everybody just kind of got caught up, especially with the nature of the NFL, where these teams can go from 3-13, now 3-14, to the Super Bowl like the Cincinnati Bengals did. And so now you want to sign every free agent imaginable, and you expect to be in the Super Bowl, even though your team was brutal the previous year.
Yeah. And look, I don't know if it's going to work with Ryan Poles. I don't know if it's going to work in the short term, but I know this: when your process is sound, you may not get immediate results, but eventually things will come around and you will get results. When your process is not sound, you may get lucky, every few years. You may get into the playoffs and sneak in, but that's not a sustainable system. So I think if we just give him some time, I like his process. If he sticks to the process, it's been proven in Kansas City. He's an offensive line guy. He understands the value of the trenches. So let's give him time. Let's let the process play out and see what he can do in a few years, and then we can judge him.
Yeah, it's like doing Wordle. You got to have a process to go through and do that. Today, by the way, today's threw me off so bad. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. But in any event, we do have questions from the audience. Actually, Sammy, before we pull up questions, hold on. I do know that there was a question. Hold on, as I put on my old man glasses, as Nick pointed out. Was it Nick? Yeah, somebody pointed out. I'm an old man. Somebody asked a question. It's Erm. It's Erm who said, what do you think is going to be the biggest move that the Bears make after the draft? What is going to be the biggest move that the Bears make after the draft?
This is a great question. I've given it a lot of thought. It's a great question, Erm. We just talked about Ryan Poles not making very big moves. So I don't know that the moves after the draft are going to be huge. I think people are going to be expecting maybe something big. I just don't see that in him. If I had to say if I had to pick a splash move, Robert Quinn's either going to get traded or cut. I think they can save a lot of money by cutting him after June 1st. But I think they're going to try to deal him and get something in return for him, even if it's just a later round pick. He's not, again, going back to what I said earlier, he doesn't fit the timeline of this team when they're going to be competitive. And it's nice to have him on here. I know he had a career year last year, but the Bears can go ahead and win 6 games with or without Robert Quinn next year, I think. So if you can get something for him, I think he will. And if not, maybe they decide to cut him after June 1st and save quite a bit of money. But, if I had to pick one, I would say that would be the big splash move. But I just don't see a lot of big splash moves coming this year from Ryan Poles. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Personally, I hope they keep Bobby Quinn. I think that there is like an issue of at least being competitive. They feel like they're pot committed at this point. And I know they'll save a little. They'll save money. That's true. But at this point, like at the same time, like still got to go out and try to win, field a competitive roster. I think Bobby Quinn's here. The money's, you've already committed a lot of money to him anyways.
Right.
Let's just write it out. And then again, I always go back to, and this is what I thought was going to happen with Khalil Mack, is that they would hang on to him and deal him during the season, similar to what happened with Von Miller last year, where he was on that Denver team, and Denver was still sort of competitive, but it was clear they were not a Super Bowl team, and they dealt him to the Rams. And I think that there could be another team this coming season who's close to the playoffs or close to making a run, who's going to need a pass rusher. Then it becomes a little bit more valuable. If you can get, I don't know, if you can get similar compensation to what you got for Khalil Mack, second round pick, Okay. Obviously would be in on that third round. I don't know. Third. I know we talked about, somebody was talking about this on Instagram today. I don't know if third is enough, but perhaps, maybe I'm wrong. But outside of straight up cutting him, I'd rather wait and try to deal him during the season. But that's just me. We'll see what happens.
No, that's a great point. I didn't even consider that, but you're right. They could use that leverage midseason to a team that's, a pass rusher away from making that run. So yeah, I could see that as well. But again, I'd be surprised if they cut him. I think the trade before the season is more likely if they decide to move him. But I like your thought of moving him midseason. I do think they could probably get more from him. And like you said, it allows him to be competitive throughout the year.
Yeah, I honestly believe that probably was the plan of Ryan Poles, of just waiting and just seeing what happened. But when the Chargers are like, we'll give you a second and pay his salary, you're like, well, I got to take that deal.
Right.
Like that is the one thing that always tickles me too. It's like, do you guys, hey, do you want Robert Quinn? Like, no, we'll take Khalil Mack. You're like, so you don't want the guy who had 20 sacks last year or whatever it was.
Yeah.
All right, take the guy who's coming off the injury. Whatever. I don't know. Maybe you want to intimidate Derek Carr. I don't know what it is. But anyway, in any event, Sammy, you got some questions queued up for us. Who is Lucas? First out of the gate, hey, Adam, does Justin Fields need to be elite for the Bears to win? Elite in the sense of top 5 quarterback? I don't think so. I think what we've seen out of Matt Eberflus and what we would expect out of his teams are, we need a very good quarterback. You need a quarterback who can win games, and you need to be able to go out there and move in execute in the 4-minute drill. You need to be able to go out there and know that when the game is on the line, he is the quarterback who can lead you to victory. And I think back to the game last year against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm like, well, that's a guy who can win us games. If we're in a close contest, I want to be that guy. I want him to be that guy that if he's got the ball in his hands with a chance to win, the Bears are going to win. So I don't know if that counts as elite, Patrick, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Next year, if you're talking about winning and winning big, I think to win next year and win big, yeah, Justin Fields is going to have to take a huge leap forward with this roster. If you're talking long term, I don't think he has to be top 5 in the league for the Bears to have success. I think you're going to see a huge difference this year just based on the offensive scheme. I think his level of play is just naturally going to improve because you're going to have a competent offensive system around him. And like your GM, you're going to have a coaching staff that has a plan and is committed to implementing that plan, not just talking about it, but actually implementing the plan. So I think you're going to see a fair amount of improvement from Justin Fields just by that alone. But yeah, if you're talking about winning big this season, based on what the roster is probably going to look like, Fields is going to have to ball out, but we'll see.
That's an excellent point. Yeah. For the Bears to win this year, Fields has to be elite. Like there's no way around it. I don't think that this team is going to be enough. You can't Trubisky it in 2018 and not to take a shot at Mitch Trubisky, but young quarterback on his way up was able to lean into that defense a little bit and rely on them to do a lot of the dirty work. I don't think the Bears are going to be able to do that this year. So if they do win, yeah, it's going to be up to Justin Fields to make that happen. All right, Sammy, what do we got next? What is that? Yeah. What is your shirt?
Sorry, not to get too chesty here, but it's the stadium capacity.
Chesty LaRue over there.
Stadium capacity for Soldier Field.
I love that. All right. Yeah. And and a lot of people, and this is one of the things that people talk about in needing a new stadium. I honestly like the fact that when they redid the stadium, they did not make it a 70,000 seat stadium. I think that you should limit capacity a little bit and go down 61.5 is a pretty good number. Like that's acceptable. Like you want a sold out crowd all the time. Yeah. Like when the Bears are winning and things are going well, that crowd's amazing. You don't need anything bigger than that. And I really look at what the Chargers were able to do when they played at Dignity Health Park or whatever it's called, StubHub Center used to be for the longest time, of playing in those intimate stadiums. Now for the Chargers, it was kind of a loss because those stadiums were always filled with opposing fans. But I think that if the NFL could play in like intimate, and that wasn't even a college stadium, it was a MLS stadium, I think it would be really cool. Like if that was the capacity. But obviously, if you're going to build a stadium in Arlington Heights, you got to be able to pack in. I don't know what SoFi did for the Super Bowl, but you got to pack in like 80,000 for the Super Bowl.
Right.
You got to make that worthwhile. You got to make a buck, and that's one of the biggest things. But I kind of like that. Where'd you get that shirt? Can we give them love?
Fansided. So Fansided has a line of t-shirts that they have. So that's where I picked this up years ago. It's an older one. I don't even know if they still have it on the site, but yeah, it's a pretty cool one. I like this.
Well, it's good because it doesn't have any logos or marks, so they can't really like get in trouble for it.
Yeah.
It's like, exactly. It's you know what it is. Well, some people know what it is, but well, now everybody knows what it is. So it's a cool shirt. I'm glad it was Carrie who asked too, by the way. I'm glad Carrie asked and I didn't have to. So that's me. What do we got? Adam and Patrick. What should the Bears name the new stadium in Arlington? Mr. Walker 003. What do you think the name of the stadium should be?
I mean, look, I'm a service member, so I'm partial to Soldier Field. It's got to be Soldier Field. We got to stick with Soldier Field. If I had to come up with something catchy, what if we get a sponsor like Denny's? We call it the Den, like the Bear Den.
Oh,
what do you think?
Look at you.
No, I can't do the corporate spot. Soldier Field is, I'm classic in that regard. I think they need to keep it Soldier Field, but that's me.
Yeah, I was thinking of Hallis Park, something like that. But of course, again, it's going to end up having. I mean, they're going to have to attach a big corporate sponsor. I think there's a workaround. Who does it? Like Invesco Field at what is it? I don't even know what Denver's. That's pretty bad when you have to stop and think like, who's the presenting sponsor for these stadiums? I know that the Staples Center in Los Angeles switched to some cryptocurrency and everybody was up in arms. Like, it'll always be Staples Center to me. And I'm like, okay, first of all, okay. I understand that you didn't want to change the name, but you're so attached to like a big box office supply chain. Like, it'll always be Staples. It's not like you took Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's name off the stadium. It's Staples Center. You know, like it's not like changing Comiskey Park, like Comiskey or the Wrigley or anything like that. I mean, I think Wrigley was the family, but yeah, it's like don't get too caught up into it. But I think that if you called it Hallis Park, it's got, I don't even know who would be the big sponsor. We would have a big sponsor. It would be SoFi, something like, somebody like that. So-and-so at Hallis Park, Soldier Field. I don't know. Soldier Field presented by USAA. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. USAA would be that's a match made in heaven right there.
But it's that would be perfect. Well, I don't know why, but that's the one thing is like, I don't know if it's because the city of Chicago runs the stadium or not, but the fact that there is not, to my knowledge, that I can think of, like there's not like it's not an Invesco at Soldier Field or anything like that. Like they've resisted that for quite some time, which is unusual because, every stadium, SoFi, they didn't even bother. They didn't even bother with anything. They're just like, whatever, pay off your student loans with by the way, and they'll be in trouble. There's ever loan forgiveness. Oh, what's SoFi going to do? They're going to have to take back their naming rights. Nobody needs them anymore. It's like if a fax machine company sponsored something like, we don't need you anymore. We got loan forgiveness. Sorry, SoFi. You're not going to put people in. Oh, I should not continue that. Sammy, save me. Give me another question. Do you guys think that Ryan and Matt will collaborate better? I think so. I think it's already starting. I think that, we're optimistic right now because everything's brand new. It's like the first week of Big Brother or Survivor or anything like that. We're like, we're all going to get along forever. Like, this is going to be great. And then it eventually changes. It feels like, though, that these two men are on the same page and that they're doing everything that they can and moving in the right direction. I see no reason to believe why they wouldn't collaborate well together. What do you think, Patrick?
Yeah, they've got a history, right? They established some kind of relationship going back a while, and to the point where Eberflus's name was top of mind for polls when he got the interview. Like, he came into that saying, "This is probably going to be my guy." I think they're going to collaborate great, but not just that, but the collaboration with others in the front office. Like we heard the story about Poles living with Cunningham, with Ian Cunningham.
Ian Cunningham, yeah.
And that was one thing I think we talked about last time I was on, is the lack of infrastructure and support that Pace had when he was here. He didn't have a guy like Cunningham that he could bounce ideas off of, and that could kind of be that check and balance to make sure he doesn't go off the rails and do something crazy. So I think just the collaboration overall, I think Poles is bringing in the right people to kind of be his support, but also be that check and balance to say, hey, like, have you thought about this? Or maybe we shouldn't go in that direction. I think the collaboration overall is going to be better at Hallis Hall.
Yeah, it is one of those things too. And I know that we talked about that, about how Ryan Pace died so Ryan Poles could continue to flourish.
Right.
And, somebody's got to fall on the sword, so to speak. And it kind of, started nudging them in the right direction. And that's one of the things that I think too, going back to the conversation about the stadium, why it's so important to have those revenue streams is so you can build out things like a front office staff that has more people involved, that has a bigger analytics department, a bigger scouting department. One of the things I would like to see changed as well is like if there was a better field maintenance, if there was a better training staff, because it always seems like the Bears do get a lot of injuries, and maybe it's because they play in the cold or whatnot. Maybe it's because the field at Soldier Field isn't the greatest, but also building out a training staff as well to kind of prevent things instead of, always reacting to stuff. So it all stems, it all comes from the same place. And I do believe that these two guys too, and you mentioned Ian Cunningham, I think it feels like a good group right now. Mm-hmm. And again, we have a lot of optimism because there's no reason not to be. Like, I know that the Bears fans like to go out there and overreact to stuff as much as any fan base that I can think of. But at the same time, we have nothing to be bummed out about.
No.
Like, I understand, like, we did not pay $90 million to Christian Kirk, and that's upsetting to a lot of people. But at the same time, like, it's not something that the Bears needed. Going after some of these other guys too, we never know. Like, I know that, like, again, we got to see the way things shake out in the draft. We still don't know what the draft philosophy is going to be. We have ideas of what it could be. It's kind of like sitting here waiting for Star Wars Episode 7. Like, this is the way that I think it's going to go.
Yeah.
And then it's going to go in either a different direction. And if it's not the direction that you think it should go in, you'll be like, well, that sucked. That was brutal. But at the same time, we got to give it an opportunity to go out there. And I don't know. I feel pretty confident with the way things are right now.
Yeah. It's funny. We say that Ryan Pace died so Ryan Poles could live, but in some ways I feel like Ryan Poles is paying for the sins of Ryan Pace. I get it. Like we're just, the last few years were terrible and we're starved for a winning team. And so to wait another year seems like torture, but listen, we want this guy to do it right. We want him to do it in a way that's sustainable, that they can build year after year, be competitive instead of just hoping to sneak into the playoffs and make a run. So it may be some short-term pain, but hopefully it'll yield some long-term success.
Yeah, you got to preach some patience. And I know that, listen, people you can have patience. I know my daughter, my 6-year-old, the other day, she could not wait for something. And I'm like, what is wrong? And I'm like, what is wrong with you? I took her to a baseball game on Friday night. It was a 6:38 start. We got to the stadium at 5 because it was an Ohtani bobblehead giveaway. And I go, we got there at 5 o'clock. You waited patiently an hour and a half for the game to start. We sat through the entire game, including an 8-run 8th inning by the Astros. And the game ended up going 4+ hours. And nary a complaint, nary like running around the aisles or anything. Like, I know you're patient. Like, you have this ability. Like, channel that. Right. Channel that patience. And I think that Bears fans need to do the same thing this year. It's going to be fun. Like, it's going to be a fun season. We get to see a quarterback develop. And I think that's going to be the big thing. That's all we need. We just need the quarterback to develop. And if we win games, great. If not, so be it. Yep. But that's the way that's going to go. All right, Sammy, what do we got next? Any thoughts of Jenkins? Thank you, Jim. Any thoughts of Jenkins and Borem fitting the mold of the offensive line? What do you make of that fact that, the signings have been on the interior of the offensive line? Of course, Lucas Patrick comes in, and I've already forgotten the guy's name from Buffalo. Like that, Was it Bates?
The all pro that we passed on. That
Jeez Louise. Everybody was Ryan Bates. Everybody was so bent out of shape. How do we miss out on Ryan Bates? Like I literally was forgetting his name. Feels like they've gone inside. Now, the draft could be very different. They could draft a couple of tackles, and I think that would tell it. But do we make – well, what do we make of the fact that they haven't brought in tackles? Is that kind of a stamp of approval so far of what Borem and Jenkins are doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I it's tough to know what Ryan Poles was trying to do behind the scenes, like who he was trying to sign maybe and just couldn't get the numbers to work, or maybe there were some guys that he wanted to target, but he knew that they weren't interested. So I don't know if he's not looking for bookends or if he's still if he's got confidence in Borem and Jenkins. I think from a mental makeup standpoint, I think Jenkins is definitely his guy, right? Like he came in talking about how disgusted he was to see Fields on the ground and nobody go over to help him up. Yeah. So you have to think he likes Jenkins' mentality and his attitude out there. So I think that fits. I think he played pretty well last year, all things considered, that he missed, was it all the preseason or most of, if not all the preseason?
Yeah, a ton of it.
I think he was like riding a bike at the most during training camp. So other than being able to stay in shape somewhat, he got no reps until he was thrust into action. And, Borem, same thing. He came in as a late round pick, probably not a lot of seasoning, not a lot of reps in the preseason with that first line. And I think he did commendable for getting thrown into that kind of a situation. So, that's the other thing too, is that these guys are just going to improve naturally from having more time in the system and more reps and more time around these other guys in a full off season to get better. So, when we think about the status of this year's offensive line, don't think like of what last year's Larry Borem and Tavon Jenkins looked like. Think that they're going to improve a little bit. So yeah, maybe that's a vote of confidence that he thinks those guys can hold down the ends for a while. And if they could, man, that would be something else, wouldn't it? If you got your left and right tackles locked down for the foreseeable future.
Oh, that would be amazing. I mean, that's exactly what you would want. That's the kind of drafts that lead to Super Bowl runs. The Saints had been able to get a lot of success. You look back at some of the Saints drafts and you're like, God, this team like just hit on so many players. And last year looked like a draft where we hit on a lot of players. And if these guys do pan out, if Tavon Jenkins is that guy that we thought, I mean, a lot of people had him mocked to the Bears at pick 20 last year. Like people would have been very happy. Well, I mean, like we would have been disappointed that we didn't get a quarterback, but if Tavon Jenkins had been our pick at 20, I think a lot of people have been like, okay, that's cool. That's what we were kind of thinking anyways. Also, Larry Borem. I think Larry Borem is probably more on notice than anybody else. Because I think when they were talking about being in shape and stuff, and listen, I have no problem with that. Like you got to go out at some point and like lose weight. Like you got to go out and prove that you want to be in shape. I was telling the story on Thursday's podcast that, back when I was with the early days of the NFL Network, I was a heavier individual. I was up around 250, 260. And somebody, took me aside and they're like, hey, you realize you're on television, right? Like they didn't come out and say like lose weight, you better start running, but they're like, yeah, you're on TV. Be mindful that people can see you. And so I took that to heart, obviously. And so I think that, if these players respond to that kind of stuff, good. And if they don't, then like, so be it. Like, okay, then we don't want you around. Like if you're not willing to go out there and put in the work, that's fine. Like we don't want to get too attached to players who aren't going to go out there and try to work and put in the system. I know it's tough not to, especially with social media. Now it feels like we get a chance to know them a little bit better. We follow Larry Borem. We follow his mother on Twitter. Yeah. Like it's cool. Like we're attached to him already. So it's like, but at the same time, it's like, bro, I hope you're listening. I don't want to have to give him tough love, but you know what? Take these lessons to heart. Yeah. And so we'll see what happens with them. So hopefully we got our guys. That would be the ideal situation. All right, Sammy, what do we got next? Hey, Ray. Oh, it's James Coe. First time, long time. Any free agent or draft prospect corners you'd like to see the team add opposite of Jalen? You know what? I've been watching the, what's the kid's name? I got a couple of, now, there was a guy I was looking at in the draft who, what is the kid's name? hold on. I was just doing, by the way, my mock draft with a twist is going to be available on NFL.com in the near future. What is happening with I'm like an old man. I can't see anything. Listen, I got my notes here. I do have, well, you got to be realistic, like who's going to be available. I know the kid from Florida has been shooting up the draft boards recently. Was it Nair or something like that? Like he's looked pretty good. I've been kind of behind trying to figure out like who could possibly be following. Oh, Kyler Gordon, the wide receiver out of Washington, is one of the guys who I've looked at as a possibility. To me, he's a late first rounder who could also slide to the second round of the draft. And remember, our pick in the second round is pretty high. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Kyler Gordon was the guy that I was looking at like, because I've said this too, repeatedly. I'm like, I would not be mad if we don't draft a defensive player. Like I'm sick of it. Like, I don't care if we have holes on defense. I don't care anymore. Who cares? I want to score points. I want to be an offensive juggernaut that scores points. If we lose, because our second corner sucks, although I still like Tommy Graham. But Kyler Gordon is a guy that I've looked at, the kid from Florida. I'm so sorry. Because one of the problems, Patrick, that I've been seeing and putting together my own version of the mock draft. And by the way, my mock draft is not a predictions piece. It's a recommendations piece. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what you should do. Like, it's not predicting that Jacksonville's going to draft the Georgia kid who's all the rage now, who's the next Aldon Smith. I'm like, don't do this, Jacksonville. Take Hutchinson. Like, he's the best. Like, he's the Bosa of this draft. Just take him. Don't try to outsmart yourself.
Overthink it. Yeah.
Even this too is with the Detroit Lions. You don't take that guy either. Like, the Lions have to take Thibodeau. They have to. Like, Thibodeau has this personality that rubs all the old white guys the wrong way. Like, if you listen to Sirius XM in the morning, the guys who are on those, like the guys who are on, or just anything, the Channel 88, pretty much everybody, except I know I've heard Tom Pelissaro on that before, so I don't want to throw him into the mix. But every old guy who's on Sirius XM hates Thibodeau because he's this dude who he just like it's refreshing, like the way he speaks his mind, and he's just talking about he's talking about why he went to Oregon and not in Alabama. He's like, well, if I went to Oregon and didn't work out, I could probably always work at Nike. Like, I'm paraphrasing. And people just lost their ass. Like, who is this guy? Yeah. But to me, that's the kind of guy that would do well with Dan Campbell. Like, who would appreciate this play? Oh, Dan Campbell. You gotta take Thibodeau. Yeah. Even though I don't think he's the second best player in the draft, but he would be the best for the Lions. But how closely do you follow the draft? Have you been looking at any possible Bears prospects, especially at the cornerback position?
Yeah, it's funny. So I haven't followed the prospects as much this year as I have in years past. But to the extent I have this year, it's been focused more on the offensive side because that's where I think they need to focus themselves. So I haven't really focused a lot on the defensive backs. I actually had to look up the kid's name. I don't even know if he'll be available in the second round, but the McCreary, I think his name's McCreary from Auburn, who I really like watching.
Oh, yeah.
Watched a lot of college football, and he was a kid that stood out to me. I don't even know if he'll be available in the second round. I have no idea where he's projected to go. He's just a prospect that really stood out to me. But no, I have not done a deep dive into the cornerback class this year. And I don't know. They just signed, what's his name? Young from Baltimore. Crookshank, who I'm probably going to butcher his name. I think that's how you say it.
No, that's fine.
And then, they got Thomas Graham still. So, I don't know where they envision him fitting, if he's going to slot in at the slot corner or if they can, they see him as a boundary corner. But, I don't know. Maybe they are gearing up for a run on offensive players in the draft. I think I'm with you. I'd like to see them focus on wide receiver and offensive line, some combination of that with their first two picks, if possible.
Yeah, I think of the other, and it's so wild to see like some of these mock drafts, because I had the Texans. I recommended the Texans take Sauce Gardner 3rd overall because they need a corner. Like you have 11 picks. I think Sauce Gardner could end up being like a Jalen Ramsey type, or like you're
Yeah.
set. You're set at corner and you don't have to worry about it. You have the pick coming back. I
Mhm.
think it's 11, somewhere in the early teens where you can come back and take a wide receiver. I think they have 13 and you can go in there and take Watkins from Ohio State and you have a receiver, you have a cornerback, you're ready to go. Derek Stingley Jr. is going to end up going to the Commanders, just like, because that just seems like a Commanders pick.
Yeah.
Like, of course, they would take the guy who is great as a freshman and hasn't been good the last 2 years. And then McDuffie is interesting too, because I saw a mock where he was 4th, like something crazy.
Wow.
And then I saw like where he went ahead of Sauce Gardner. Like I think he went to the Jets.
Mhm.
But then another one where he's like 28th. I'm like, okay, he's not falling to 28th. Like he's not, like it's just not happening. So it's so wild. And then, and then thinking about the wide receivers, I look at like the first 12 picks, the first 12 teams drafting, and I'm like, number one, I don't think any of them should take a quarterback. Although I do think that the Carolina Panthers will end up taking one of the quarterbacks. I would take the Liberty kid, Malik Willis, but it will probably be Pickett. I would not take a quarterback. If I was, honestly, I don't think Seattle's taking a quarterback. I don't think Seattle's going to take a quarterback with their first pick, and they could end up with somebody like, in my weird convoluted thing, like Evan Neal could be available on the offensive line, or else it could be Ike, who's one of those two guys could fall based on the way that I was seeing the board fall, like based on recommendations, to where they can get a pretty good offensive lineman. I really do believe that the Seahawks are locked in at Drew. I think they really like Drew Lock. And there was a story there was a story that came out, and I'm so sorry that I saw this on Twitter. I don't know who said it, but I read it on Twitter that Vic Fangio just did not like Drew Lock for whatever reason. And Teddy Bridgewater miraculously became, maybe it was, I'll give Brandon Perna the credit. And then Teddy Bridgewater became the quarterback, but Drew Lock does a lot of the things that I think Pete Carroll would like, where he just chucks the ball deep. And I think when you have receivers, and if they keep Lockett and if they keep DK Metcalf and they let Drew Lock go out there and just huck the ball deep, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll probably like it enough that you don't have to make the quarterback selection at 12 or wherever they are, 11, 12, somewhere in that range. They could actually try to trade back into the back end of the first round, because Kansas City has back-to-back picks. Detroit has the 32nd selection because they have that from the Rams. Kansas City has one of Miami's a pick via Miami, I think. It's weird. Kansas City has 2 picks late in the draft, where if I'm the Kansas City Chiefs, and this pains me to say because I love both these receivers and both of them have been linked to the Bears, but if I was Kansas City, I would go with Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore is great.
Yeah.
I think he's a fantastic player. I would not let him fall out of the first round. I hope he falls to Chicago. I don't think it's happening. And of course, Christian Watkins fought. Like I doubt Kansas City would go back-to-back wide receiver.
Yeah.
But I think it would be, I would tell them to. I'm giving away my whole column here, but I would tell them to. I'm like, I know you have Juju, and I think that people are way too low on Juju for fantasy purposes. But I go, you gotta get like 3 wide receivers. I think the Chargers need to draft. Like, I know, was it Gerald Williams, who a lot of people think like, oh, he could fall to the second. And, guys coming from injuries always have that kind of risk. We saw Jalen Johnson do it. We saw Eddie Jackson do it. I know we're not talking Bears, but it's fun to talk draft now. Because I feel like I've now finally caught up. Like, I think the Chargers, I think that's a great spot for the Chargers to take him. Please still click into the column when it becomes available, even though I'm giving away everything here for free. I don't know. It's so difficult though, because the idea of the first 12 picks is that the wide receiver class is so deep. None of those teams should touch wide receiver, but then all those middle teams, and even Minnesota, who again, I have them taking McDuffie. I could see them picking a wide receiver. Like, it would make sense. Like, yeah, like that's not a bad idea. Green Bay has 2 picks in the first round. They should probably take 2 wide receivers as well. They won't. It would probably seem condescending to them. What do you think? Like, I don't know. What is your philosophy with those 2 picks for the Bears?
Yeah. So I mean, I'd love to see them trade down and get some more picks because how deep this class is from a wide receiver standpoint. But that always depends on whether you got a partner that's willing to trade up, right? So let's assume they can't trade back. I want them to go some combination of O-line, wide receiver, best player available. And I think they're going to have some good players available from the wide receiver position in the second round. Like you said, there are just so many prospects here. I saw Treylon Burks. They're talking about him maybe falling. He was phenomenal at Arkansas. I don't know if he fits the mold of what the Bears are looking for, but
I have him going to Green Bay.
Yeah, that would disappoint me because I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him with Aaron Rodgers for the next 4 or 5 years.
The good news is you won't, because he's going to target Alan Lazard 1,000 times and ignore the rookie. So Jordan Love will throw him the ball next year.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll trade up trade back into the first round for a third pick and take a quarterback again. Who knows what the Packers are going to do?
But that joke writes itself, right? The Packers first pick Matt Corral.
What are they going to do with Jordan Love, by the way? What is that poor kid? I kind of feel bad for him to some extent because he's stuck. Where's he going to go?
Who's the Bears hater? Peter Bicard?
Yeah.
Whoever. He was talking about Jordan Love is the new Drew Brees.
Yeah.
And you're like, bro, the person I'm so pissed because I'm like, who you're describing is Mitch Trubisky. And like Drew Brees, he's on his second team. And then some kid who followed me is like, dude, he's on his third. I'm like, oh my God. Yes, he was in Buffalo last year. Of course he was. Right. I'm an idiot. But I'm like, well, Brees was sort of with Miami for a couple of hours before he failed his physical. Can I count that? But it's like, I don't think Jordan Love's going to be a good player.
No, I don't think so either. But he also has no opportunity to get better. Where he is now. What is he going to get? Some mop up time, maybe next season. But and who's going to trade for him based on what he's put out on tape during his limited action in the regular season? So, that's just a bad situation for him. Kind of a wasted pick for the Packers, which I don't hate it. I don't hate to see that.
Yeah, it's bugging me that they ruined that pick. If you don't think that Jordan Love is going to make it in the NFL, why don't you comment the word sick into the comments if you think that Jordan Love's going to end up being a regrettable pick for the Green Bay Packers. I would appreciate that. I also would say this too, is the Drew Brees, Mitch Trubisky thing is Drew Brees actually played a lot. He split time with Doug Flutie and, but got an opportunity to play kind of like Mitch in his first year when he was battling with John Fox and everything. I honestly, I don't know. I've now talked myself. I actually talked myself into the Steelers not taking the way my mock draft recommendations worked out is that Kenny Pickett would be available to the Steelers. And I'm like, give Mitch a chance. I personally hope that Mitch Trubisky gets an opportunity to start without a rookie there. And just if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, Pittsburgh, you can draft a quarterback next year. Give Mitch one season, unfeathered, with Mike Tomlin, and let him go out there and do his thing. And I hope it works out. I don't know. I'm kind of rooting for him.
So here's my thing about Mitch Trubisky. I think Tomlin is going to do a much better job hiding his deficiencies than Matt Nagy did. I think Matt Nagy had the ego thing where he didn't want to just take the low hanging fruit. He could have thrown Mitch Trubisky out there, simplified things for him and beaten up on the bad teams. Yes, he probably wasn't going to go out and beat the top notch teams, but he probably could have picked up a couple more wins here and there if he had just, simplified things for Mitch and taken care of business against some of those, lower ranking teams. And he didn't. And I think Tomlin will do that, right? Tomlin's just looking to get through next year. And with Mitch, and if they lean on the running game and they have a decent defense, I think, they could win 9 or 10 games next year. I don't think Mitch is great, but I think with the right coaching, you can beat up on some bad teams and sneak a few wins out here and there.
Dude, Tomlin doesn't have losing seasons. They're going to win 9 games. What are we talking about?
He doesn't care. Right. He doesn't care how he wins.
If they win just 8 games, they will tie one. They will not be under 500. That's what they do. That's what they do. Right. They go out there and they do their thing. Sammy, by the way, I'm sorry. Are there more questions? I'm sorry. We've gone on to this rant of the draft. Sorry, JF1 Bears forever. Should the Bears draft Tyquan Thornton? He ran a 4.2 and just met with the Bears. You know what? I saw that report as well, and I love that play. I think that's a pretty good get. That is one of the ones, because like whenever I see the mock drafts, and I could be mistaken, but I see a lot of optimism of guys who I'm looking at. I'm like, I don't think that guy's going to be there. Like, I just don't think, like, I don't think he's going to be there, but I think that Thornton is one of those guys who can be there. How do you feel?
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw a couple of mocks where they were saying he could go as late as the 5th round. I mean, if you can get a 4.2 burner in the 5th round, we've had some success recently drafting wide receivers in the 5th round with Darnell Mooney. So, why not? It'll depend on what they do with their first pick. I don't think they should, reach for him in the 2nd.
No.
But if they take like an offensive lineman early, or they take a bigger bodied receiver, maybe they end up with like David Bell in the 3rd round, and they want to double down on wide receiver and come back with a burner like Thornton late to kind of offset the slower, more route running receiver in David Bell. Maybe they do something like that, but I would not be disappointed if they were able to get Thornton late. I mean, I think they want to go vertical with Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields wants to go vertical. I think the only person that didn't want to last year was Matt Nagy for some reason. So, yeah.
There's a lot of people that do not understand what Justin Fields' game is, because you see this a lot on Twitter, where they're like, well, this is, can't expect the running quarterback to do this. You're like, cool. He's not a running quarterback.
Right.
Like, he's fast. Like, make no mistake about it. He can run, He can run by you, but he's a pocket quarterback who loves to throw the ball deep. Watch an Ohio State game just once.
Yeah.
And, whatever. But I do, by the way, Sammy, what other question? Do we have another question we need to get to? I want to make sure. Okay, listen. What do we think of the Tavon Young signing? Tony, thank you for bringing this up. I do like this one. I know it's one of those things like, if healthy, and this is every player in the NFL. If healthy, he is a great addition to this team. My thing is, what are your injuries? Are you injury prone, or is it like, or what is it?
Mm-hmm.
He's been hurt. He doesn't seem injury prone to me. And I think that if he can go out there and give us double-digit games, I think that's going to be a pretty good pick. And these are the kind of guys that we need to be adding to this squad. And again, and I don't hate this either, is sometimes pay attention to the program where these guys are coming from. Now, we've seen a lot of Chiefs, Byron Pringle. We've seen a number of Colts, especially defensive guys, come over. That's a good sign. That's a good thing. That intimate knowledge of those guys, that's a good thing. But again, when somebody comes over who's played well for the Baltimore Ravens, and we saw him play well against us, I think that's good. I go sometimes, like, I really like that pick. How'd you feel about it?
Yeah. I mean, low risk, high reward to me. I think it was like a 1-year deal, right? But yeah, I mean, I think it's consistent with what Poles has done this offseason. He's got a lot of guys on really short deals that, who knows, they could really pay dividends for very little money. And if they do, you re-sign them, right? I mean, like, give him a 1-year audition, but don't go, he seems that seems like the kind of player that last year Ryan Pace may have given like a 3-year deal and slightly overpaid because they needed a cornerback, right? But I think Poles is been patient, and I think that's a great, upside deal for them. And if he can ball out on that kind of a deal this year, terrific. And then, we'll reevaluate next year. But yeah, low risk, high reward to me.
Love it. Yeah, the old Charles Finley, like, sign a bunch of dudes to 1-year deals who are out to prove something.
Yeah.
Then see what happens, and then we'll sign them to long-term deals, and then they'll all flounder. No, but but we'll also see. We'll also have a lot of undrafted guys, and I think that's going to be a big depth filling proposition. And I honestly believe, and I could be mistaken, but I honestly believe that he wants to bring in people on those undrafted deals who have something to prove, who have something to play for. Like, there's nothing wrong with filling out your roster with undrafted players, because obviously these guys, there's a lot of guys who can go. Like, it's not like, look at whatever, go to Wikipedia, go look at an NFL draft and scroll through it and see who the Pro Bowlers are and things like that. Like how many draft picks missed. And then all you got to do is hit on a couple of guys who are undrafted free agents. The Bears have actually done a nice job of getting guys in the 5th and 6th round. Thinking of like Darnell Mooney and Tommy Graham and guys like that. Even others, Gibson, they do a nice job of that. So I think bringing in these hungry guys who have something to prove will be pretty good. And I think it's better than overpaying for free agents. It doesn't make you feel better in March, but I think at the end of the season, you'll be like, oh, these guys could actually play. There's a lot of pleasant surprises and things like that.
Well, here's the thing, too. This is going to be a tone-setting year for Eberflus, right? We've heard that the first year of his system is tough for some players because it's a lot. It's intense, right? And you need them to buy in. Who better to buy in than, guys playing on one-year deals with something to prove, undrafted free agents with something to prove. I mean, he's filling that team with a lot of guys who are going to come in hungry and are probably going to get on board pretty quickly with the program. So I'm sure that's not gonna hurt to have a bunch of guys in your corner, all pulling on the same side of the rope.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great way to look at that as well. And Sammy, do we have time for one more? We got a Patrick. Are there any projected undrafted free agents you think we should keep an eye on? This is from Jason. This is a tough ask, Jason. Like this is I don't know. Have you been looking at the undrafted free agent market already?
You know what? It's funny you say that. I haven't been looking extensively, but I do have a guy that I think is a possibility at defensive back. Guy named Malik Sonier from Midwestern State University as an undrafted free agent. Take a look at him. I think he's somebody that could impress the Bears. Another guy could come in hungry and contribute on special teams right away. So yeah, that's a little bit under the radar, but definitely check him out.
That feels like that question was a plant. You were set up way too well for that. And somebody's asking about an undrafted free agent. You're like, well, let me tell you, I got one for you. Like, come on. That did not just happen.
Totally not planted.
Well done, you two. Oh, believe me. I feel like Ace Rothstein in Casino. There's no way that wasn't a setup. 3 people just hit the Powerball. Stop it.
My wife and I were laughing. The comment on the last podcast was like, yeah, who that guy's so handsome that you had on. And you're like, oh, this definitely isn't related to Patrick. I was like, yeah, I don't know who that is. Who could that be?
Who could that be?
Definitely not my wife. Just must be some random listener. And
yeah, because I was there. I'm like, Patrick's not that good looking. Like, it shouldn't have elicited that kind of response. No, I'm teasing. But listen, I want to let you go. I know. Listen, we kept you for an hour, and we appreciate that. We got into a weird rant about the draft, and I didn't even get a chance to say that I think that Seattle could be a team that could trade back into the back end of the first round. Yeah. With Kansas City having 2 picks, with Detroit having, I'm imagining Detroit, if Detroit has 32, they have 33 as well. I think they could actually draft a quarterback themselves, but that could be an opportunity for Seattle, but that's the thing.
Yeah.
But listen, I do want to thank you for stopping by once again. We always appreciate you having you. And once again, we want to wish you the best of luck for the Bear Down Chicago pod. I didn't know if it was, I was like, because when Nick Moriano was here, it's like, is it CHGO or is it Chicago? Do you say the full word? I didn't know if we say Bear Down Chai Pod, like it's chai tea latte or something like that. Bear Down Chicago pod with some of our favorites. And so we appreciate you being on, and good luck and a lot of success to your pod as you guys get that going.
Thank you.
Even though you're veterans, but I know it's a new venture.
Well, we really appreciate it. And as always, I appreciate coming on anytime. I'm happy to jump on. I love chopping it up with you. So, and again, we'd love to have you on the podcast. So
what the
we'll have to get you on. And
contrary to popular belief, I'm very easy to find. Like it's not difficult to find me. Some people think I'm in some ivory tower, but somehow kids on the internet have found my phone number. Some people, probably more well-connected than them, cannot find it apparently, but listen, I'm very easy to find. So if you would like me to come on, I would enjoy it. I think it would be a great opportunity to go and chop it up as well. And I've got, awesome. Listen, I'm sort of constrained in this, I'm trying to be, a gracious host. when I get on your show, I can't promise. I'm a loose cannon. Things could get wild. Things could get loose.
You gotta watch out for some of those guys. They get, especially Shagru. He's
Shagru. You get us in a room together, it's gonna be madness. But we do thank you for coming on, and I look forward to doing the home and home. I do owe you guys a visit, and I would love to pay that off very soon.
That'd be great. We'd love to have you on, Adam.
All right. Well, thank you so much. There he goes, the great Patrick Sheldon. I thought that was a good conversation. I know we got a little drafty, but listen, there hasn't been a whole lot going on, and we got a couple of weeks to go before the NFL draft finally hits. It feels like it should have happened already, and at some point we'll be able to talk about other things and about the new players, the new studs that we got coming into Chicago. Instead, we're talking about Trevor Siemian getting his car jacked. But until Thursday, we'll be back. Give a like. Thank you. Yes, give a like. You know what? Put the word sick in there again. If you think the Packers suck, write the word sick right now. Let people know. But I appreciate everybody. Listen, honestly, appreciate everybody hanging out with us here tonight. Appreciate you all participating and being a part of the show. I feel like we're one big family. Again, we're trying to be one big family with all the Bears people. We love everybody. We want to spread good cheer. What is it? Christmas? Listen, we want to spread positivity. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. And we'll see you on Thursday for the podcast. Until then, bear down.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.